Welcome everyone to At Home with APH for Code Jumper 101A. We are delighted that you are with us today and that you are here to learn all about Code Jumper. While you are coming in, I'm going to launch a poll. We want to know who you are and where you're from. So come on in, make yourself comfortable, and with us today we have 3 questions so that we can learn more about you. The first one is, what is your job title? We would love to know what you do for your profession. The second question we would love to know about is, where are you from? Whereabouts in the United States? What country are you from? Feel free to populate in our chat box where you are from, as well as how you heard about this webinar. Was it through our website, through email from APH, social media? Maybe a friend or colleague shared with you, or maybe you even heard about it through the HumanWare email. So please let us know who you are so that we know who our audience is today. It looks as though we have many teachers of the visually impaired that are joining us, low vision specialist, orientation mobility specialist, even assistive technology. That is great. We even have technology and coding teachers with us and college faculty. So we are thrilled that you are here. We have representation from all over the world, which is really exciting. Ontario, Canada, and Panama. Of course, we have great professionals with us from here in the United States. So we are glad that you chose At Home with APH today to learn about Code Jumper. The opening code for ACVREP credit is accessible. ACCESSIBLE, accessible. That is for your ACVREP credit, that opening code. And I'm going to go ahead and close our poll. We have about 55% reporting. I'm going to share out the results so that you can see as well who is joining us today. We have teachers of the visually impaired at 49%, with a splattering of other professionals that are with us from orientation mobility, AT, college faculty. Love that we have paraprofessionals, and we have our chat box that is being populated as well. It looks as if we have a tie between the Northeast and the Midwest of the United States. But we have a lot of Canada and other countries that have also reported that they are joining us. And again, we realize that it seems like most of how our webinars are heard about is through our APH email. So we hope that that is helpful to you. So again, the opening code is accessible, and we are thrilled that you are with us today. Please know that we are having some technical difficulties with our captioning, and we will keep you updated as of how that is going. Paul, we are ready for you.
All right, thank you very much, Amy. Welcome in one more time to Code Jumper 101A. Thank you for joining us today. Our time, we're going to start, of course, and our objectives. After we're done that, we're going to learn about exploring the Code Jumper kit. So please make sure that you have your app installed and that your hub is connected. We're then going to review lessons 2, 5, and 6. Of course, this is a 1.5 ACVREP credits. We want to have the questions in the chat and get to as many of those as we possibly can. Here is a photo of Code Jumper. Please note all the prices listed here are for US. If you are interested in international orders, please contact HumanWare for those. The non-quota price, $999. Of course, this is a quota eligible product. The quota price is $769. And you see the catalog number there to look it up on the APH catalog. All right, 2 presenters today. First, Robin Lowell, Senior Manager Accessibility for I2E. Also, with I2E, Beth Dudycha, Senior Manager, Content Development. And finally, let's look at our objectives. We have 4 of them today. So we're going to take a look at 3 resources for professionals to use in the classroom with CodeJumper. We'll look at 5 elements of the CodeJumper kit used in lessons 2, 5, and 6. We'll describe how to design a simple program that uses a sequence of commands. We'll describe a bug, the computer kind, not the crawly, nasty kind, and identify how to fix the bug. And actually, it's 5 of them today, not 4. We'll describe a loop and learn how to create a program that uses a loop. With those things in mind, let's turn this over to our presenters.
All right, thank you, Paul. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'll do that. Share screen and screen 2. All right. Okay, fantastic. All right, well, welcome everybody. And Beth and I will start out by introducing a little bit about ourselves and telling you a little bit. So again, my name is Robin Lowell, and I have a master's in actually biology education, and I have been a teacher of students with visual impairments for more than a decade, let's say. And I was a high school math teacher at the Washington State School for the Blind, distance learning. So I did distance learning the way we're doing it now many years ago. So I'm well versed in that area, what distance learning looks like. And I've worked as an itinerant teacher in Oregon, Washington, and yeah, so I've been working with CodeJumper since the beginning and part of the team to write the curriculum for it. So know CodeJumper really well, and I'm really excited to show you and have a hands-on experience with CodeJumper. So Beth, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here today. I was an elementary teacher for many years, and then I became a curriculum developer as well as a computer programmer. So I am kind of all of the above. I love computer science, especially teaching all of the skills to kids at all different levels, meaning when people thought that kindergartners couldn't learn elements of computer science, we really wowed them with CodeJumper and some of the things that kids can do with this. It's really, really powerful. So I was part of the team to help develop the curriculum here, and I just love this product and the inclusivity about it, and I've had a lot of fun learning from Robin and her expertise and all of the different elements that this encompasses. So I am really excited to get to work with you, and I'm so excited some of you have a kit. I have my kit here, and I'm ready to go.
All right, fantastic. So let's start off by talking about, there we go. Why is CodeJumper so important? And Beth touched on that. So currently on the screen, we have 4 different images of different programs that are already out there, Microbit, and we have Scratch, or actually 2 programs, Scratch, Microbit, but there's a lot of others. And they're fantastic ways to learn basic coding, but they're extremely visual. And so a student who doesn't use the screen, this isn't going to be very accessible for them. They get to participate somewhat. So it's all dragging and dropping to create this block codes, to create a program, and then have a sprite, a little character on the screen, do something like a kitty cat will move around, or you can create a game. All very visual. So our students with visual impairments will be able to help out with the planning process, but they don't get to see the outcome. And so this is why CodeJumper is so important. It's an inclusive experience all students can use together, where every student can participate from the very beginning to the very end. So they see those outcomes. They get to be part of those outcomes, which is really important. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Yes, I can code. That is something that we need to really instill in all of our children from kindergarten on. And Beth mentioned that we've even worked with kindergartners with Code Jumper. They were using the vocabulary. They were just really into all these things like algorithms and bugs, and they knew how to use that language and apply it. So coding skills is such an important skill every student needs. It's not only teaches the basics of computer science, but computational thinking, critical thinking, and problem solving, just to name a few. And with employment rates so low, these skills are so incredibly important to get our kids understanding from an early age that yes, this is something that they can do. It's much harder to change your mindset about something when you get to middle school or high school, when you can do text-based coding. We need to start the mindset from kindergarten on that yes, I can code, and that's what Code Jumper can do. So let's dig in first to the curriculum. So looking at the curriculum. So Beth, will you take us how the curriculum is laid out?
Yes, you bet. And I just want to add one more thing too. It is powerful for every single child and student to learn about coding, in part because we need all of those perspectives. We need your creativity for every student to be able to shine by understanding computer science and how it works. So whether you're an artist or a math geek, it doesn't matter. We need everybody to be able to know how to do it. So we laid out this curriculum. APH has a wonderful curriculum here. It starts in 2 different settings. And the idea with the primary lesson, with all of them, is that a teacher who may not have a background in computer science can still take these lessons and walk through Code Jumper with any student. You do not have to have a degree in computer science. You do not have to know a lot about it. We have laid everything out here for you. It starts in the primary lessons. Sometimes older students who have had no exposure to computer science may actually need to start in the primary lessons. And you can sort of blow through it a little quicker with an older student, I'm sure. But it really is imperative that everyone sort of have that foundation. So we just laid it out this way. The advanced lessons definitely go up into the middle school grades in terms of concepts and understanding. And there's an image here of Code Jumper and the app. There's just a picture. All of this is on the website at codejumper.com. You can download the entire curriculum, either view it through HTML or as a PDF. In this slide that's up right now, it shows a little bit about the lesson structure. Each lesson is pretty similar in terms of the way that it is designed. It starts with an unplugged activity. Excuse me. Unplugged implies that you don't have to have a screen, and you don't even have to have necessarily the Code Jumper kit for some of these. Unplugged means that students can still understand the concepts behind computer science without needing a screen or without needing a device like that. It's actually a great way to bring in multimodal thinking and get kids using their bodies in different ways. Sometimes these lessons are the ones that reach certain kids as the most powerful experience for them. A guided activity comes next, and it walks through the same concept as an unplugged activity. It's kind of the next part in the lesson. And you walk through with Code Jumper how the unplugged concept applies to Code Jumper itself. And you kind of guide students in their thinking so they understand how it works in the Code Jumper kit. The exploration activity would be sort of the next option, where students have the foundation, they've got the concept from the unplugged, they've had the guided walkthrough, and now they get an opportunity to explore. This is where it's a little bit more freeform, and you might give them some challenges that are new or different. They might be working in groups, or they might be working independently. And then at the very end, there's some check for understandings that you can certainly watch in the exploration. You could watch in the guided activity as well, but you'll have a good feel for whether your student understands the concepts by the way that they are exploring and the way that they're playing around with the idea. Every lesson also has the expected outcomes at the front, key vocabulary lessons, which may or may not need to be defined, but good to understand before you dive into it. You as a teacher, understand before you dive into it. And then also diving into it with your students. A lot of them may not be familiar with some of that vocabulary, and that's why it's here. There's some resources in there. There's a lot of tutorial videos if you're unsure how to use CodeJumper in great detail. They walk through everything. So those are also in there. There's an objective, all the materials that will be needed for each activity. At the end of the lesson are some very easily printable materials in case you would like to print them out ahead of time. There's step-by-step instructions for each activity and what would be needed to modify if you were going to do this in a classroom. Remember, CodeJumper is designed to be done, can be done in a general ed classroom with students with visual impairment or not. It is open to all different kinds of students. And so you might need to think about a few things to modify if you needed to be alone or if you needed to be with a small group. So there's just some tips and tricks in there for that. And then some closure and how to finalize the lesson. And within a lot of the lessons, there's one kind of theme or one piece of material that is sort of up to you as the educator or the student. And that's the computer science journal. There's a lot of reasoning that went into thinking about why students would need to keep a computer science journal. Here is an image of a student who is working in a gen ed classroom, writing down his thoughts about the concepts that we had discussed specifically. Giving kids a record is really, really important. So Robin, did you want to go through a little more about the computer science journal and how that could look?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to add to, so in all the materials that are on the website, the code cards, the printable materials at the end are all set up that they can be easily embossed as well. They can be translated into Braille and then embossed. So the computer science journal, the CodeJumper kit does not save your code. Once you've unplugged a pod, your code is gone. So how are we going to really track what our students are doing and understanding what their knowledge level is? And the computer science journal is a fantastic way to do that. So that, like Beth said, we have a student writing in large print his thoughts on whatever task they were completing that day. It can really be done in any format. So throughout the curriculum, there's not a specific, here's your computer science journal. We really thought that leaving it up to the teacher and the individual student to determine how they wanted to record that information. So, you know, paper journal is great. Do a document on the computer using a note taker, like a Braille note taker is great too. Even audio recording. So there's a lot of ways to just take all this information that they're learning, put it into their computer science journal, and then they have a record of everything that they have done, which you as the teacher then can go back and do whatever that you want to with that information, you grade it or just see progress. There's so all of that information is saved right there. And so next, again, moving on to thinking about how do we assess our students. So Beth, can you talk us through what an assessment could look like for CodeJumper?
Sure. Actually, the computer science journal is a great way to get some touch points for how students are digesting and the information that they're working through and how they're applying it to different scenarios. So those are great little touch points within each lesson. And then there's two relatively larger assessments that are included on the website as well that have a great rubric for a project. It's a bigger project, it's a little bit more open-ended, but you're looking for some key specific things. And the rubric in here could also, if you wanted to, you could apply this rubric in more specifics to each lesson if you wanted to. It's sort of an example for, you know, every teacher is going to have a different perspective on how much they want to be evaluating and when to determine the next phase. But these two bigger projects, the assessment the rubric that's there for them could easily be modified for different places in the curriculum as well. So just gives you an idea on, especially if you're not familiar with computer science, on what you should be looking for. If this is totally new to you and you're a little intimidated by computer science, don't worry. Maybe check out that assessment at the end of the primary first, if that's where you're going to start. It'll give you an idea of some of the other things to be looking for. So on the screen right now is just an example of that.
Yeah, so just in more detail, the rubric is a matrix. So it's a table with the criteria. So you have a level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and the 3 areas are project planning, program creation, review, and debugging, and each one. So project planning, for example, level 1, student provides little to no evidence of their project brainstorm, so on. All the way up to 4, student provides detailed evidence of their project brainstorming and provides specific examples to share. And so there's all this matrix, so you can easily see where your student is. All right, so moving on. Now let's dig into the meat of it. Okay, this is where we're actually going to start the hands-on portion of our event. And so we're starting with the unplugged activities. So maybe before we get started, let's give everybody a moment to get some materials ready for yourself. Either a piece of paper, or open a document on your computer, or get a file open on your Braille note. And so we can get going, because this requires audience participation. And I'm going to turn it over to Beth, and she's going to walk us through the unplugged activity.
Yes, and I'm just pulling it up here so I can just double check. So this activity is really to get students thinking about algorithms and how algorithms work in their world. And this can be done in lots of different ways. We give a few suggestions in the curriculum to do it, to write something down, but this could also be done totally verbally. The nice thing about writing it down is that it gives you, as an educator, a viewpoint in case there needs to be some adjustment later. So when we say the word algorithm, a lot of people think about math. They think back to their algebra class, they think about numbers and things like that. But an algorithm is a list of steps to complete a task. So it reminds me of speech, a speech class I took once where they said, oh, how do you make a peanut butter sandwich? And then I made out the directions and I handed it to someone else. So right now, just take a moment for yourself and think of something in your everyday world, either for yourself or for the student that you're thinking about, something that they do rhythmically that has a process, something simple. It can be as simple as, making a peanut butter sandwich, setting the table. It could be something like brushing teeth, a rhythm, a sequence that they're already familiar with. It's not new learning, something they already know how to do. And think about what that might be. Then the next step would be to ask students to really think from the very, very beginning, what is the first thing you need to do if you're going to brush your teeth? It might be, one student might say, I have to walk into the bathroom. The other student might start with picking up their toothbrush or finding the toothpaste. I don't know. It depends on your student, and that's okay. As long as they have a start and a logical sequence through what happens, and then you as the educator can kind of look at that and determine if they're missing something large. It's really fun to take these and swap them. So right now, take a moment to think about something you do in your everyday life that could be considered as an algorithm. Maybe getting in your car to drive, maybe starting to teach a class that's now online. There might be steps along the way. You would normally be writing this in your computer science journal. And I know we haven't officially started a class, so you could take anything you can use to write something down. And I think with the students, we had them review, they test it against each other. So they read one and then ask the other student to follow their directions. So it can be a really fun group activity that that everybody could be involved in.
And feel free to put them in the chat. We'd love to see and
Yeah.
share with everybody what, so you can do it on a piece of paper or you can do it directly in the chat. And we want to see your ideas and see how you think about different processes. So let's give you maybe about 4 minutes. I think would probably be good. And I'd like to see them start rolling into our chat. And I think we can all learn some stuff from this, maybe some new skills and strategies.
It's also nice to hear topics, because I think sometimes making a sandwich is not always intuitive for a kindergarten student. Their parent may make their sandwiches for them. So it's fun to think about the things that all the different age levels might come up with as well. I'm just looking at the chat. Let's see. Can we send the PowerPoint link? Are we going to post the PowerPoint link afterwards? I think so. Leanne, do you know the answer to that?
Was that link in what you gave me, Robin?
No, but I can send it to you.
Okay.
I think that was already sent. It was already put in
not
there.
Robin's.
Oh, okay.
And this is being recorded and will be posted. So there's also a series. This is a series of the same webinar 4 times. So if you missed something, you can join us again. Now they do have the ability to raise their hand as well. And I'll give you guys the ability to see that. Okay, so they're creating a sequence of an everyday text.
How to make a glass of chocolate milk.
Right.
I love that.
Ooh, so what are all the steps for making a glass of, oh, that sounds actually really delicious right now. I just had this craving for a nice, cold, frothy glass of chocolate milk.
And if you want other people to see what you write, change your to all panelists and attendees, and we can all share. I know what my sequence would be, is how to make a s'more.
Ooh, yes. Oh, that sounds, we have a glass of chocolate milk. We have a s'more. Ooh, maybe I should add chocolate fondue in there so we can, so can everybody we have a how to make a glass of chocolate milk, how to scramble an egg, but we want to see the steps. So throw your steps in there. So the scrambled egg, as much as we would like, doesn't just appear on your plate. So put your steps in there. You number them 1, step 1 for like Jim put for scrambled egg. 1, go to the refrigerator. 2, open the refrigerator. 3, find the eggs. 4, take an egg out, and so on and so on. So make a bulleted list of actually how you're doing this, because we want to see your thought process. So this is kind of the thought process that your students are going to be going through, and it's a good exercise to go through it yourself. Because I remember, Beth, talking about the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I did that in 2nd grade, and some of them were fantastic because we had peanut butter on the edge of the bread, not the face of the bread. And obviously it was very powerful because 2nd grade was a long time ago.
You might end up having a brave soul read their steps.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just come off of mute and read it.
Can they come off mute?
All they have to do is raise their hand and I will give them their microphone.
All right, do you have any brave
That's
souls?
easier for you, go for it. Folding a shirt is one I just did with my son yesterday.
Yes, those are really great. I was talking to with an O&M instructor the other day about the sequence, especially with remote learning. This is such an important skill right now, to know the steps and all the pieces of the day.
Oh, yeah. How to turn in your homework. There's 14 steps involved.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a backpack one. Locate, oh, so walk to the hook where the backpack is located. Locate top of backpack and zipper. Oh, no problem, Beth. I can see them, and I'll just read them as they go. Oh, did we have a hand raise?
You have a hand. Oh, wait a minute. The hand went down. They got to hold it up if they want to do it.
All right, Lori says, how to make a glass of chocolate milk. Get a glass out of the cupboard. Get the milk out of the fridge. Take out the milk and place it on the counter. Open the milk. Pour into the glass. Get the Hershey syrup out of the fridge. Open the syrup. Squeeze the syrup into the glass of milk. Get a spoon out of the drawer. Stir the glass of milk until well mixed. Very good. I see one more step at the end. If you're just standing there staring at your glass of milk, what do I do?
I think it's also important to kind of mention here that the unplugged activities have great value. Mm-hmm. And I know that we as adults don't necessarily normally sit around and ask each other these questions, but there's a reason. And if you end up thinking about this later today or tomorrow, or you're talking with someone and you think about the sequence of how you did something in particular, you will start to realize how embedded algorithms are in our world. It's a really powerful thing to do this unplugged, because it takes it away from being that these are concepts that are only connected to the computer. These actually touch every element of a lot of education and teaching. It's just outside of CodeJumper. So it might feel uncomfortable right now because we don't all know each other, but we've got a couple ideas here. And I think maybe we get the idea of sort of how that might be really powerful in a classroom or with students. Don't skip the unplugged if you can help it, because they are so foundational to kids really having that door open to them, especially some of the kids who this might be the part they understand, and then when you switch it to CodeJumper, they might have a little more trouble. So there's really a lot of value and in doing these. I know right now it feels very conversational. You could certainly do it in a much more fun way if you are one-on-one with a student, or if you actually have or set it up for the next time. Think of the idea, and then the next time you meet with the student, you could have the eggs in the bowl and have them have those materials where you could read it to them and practice this a little bit.
Absolutely. And I just want to add, especially now that we're remote learning, so, Leanne and Beth and I and everybody in the chat, it's a great social piece too. You're working together, you can collaborate, and it's an opportunity in remote learning as well to create a hands-on experience, being able to do all these steps, just like Beth was saying. So there's social collaboration happening here. There is using, multi-modalities. You're building something using your hands. It's that tactile experience. So really thinking about these unplugged in a remote setting are opportunities to get your students together to connect on something and work together on a project, even outside of CodeJumper. And the more opportunities we have for that, I think the better. All right, great job, everybody. Let's kind of move on to our next activity. So the sequence, as Beth talked about, so we start out with the unplugged activity, and now we're gonna go to let's get our hands on CodeJumper. And for those of you who do not have a kit, that's totally fine. I will be showing mine, both the kit and the app, but I'll also be really talking through each piece so you can kind of get a sense of what we're doing. So let's talk about the pieces and parts that are in CodeJumper. So just so we know in the chat, you need to put in there if you're ready to go with your kit for those who have one. And I'd like you guys to have available for you for this part the hub, which should be connected to the app, the play pods, 4 play pods, and a pause pod. and a pause pod, and also the loop pod, because we're going to start by just going through each of these pieces, especially for those who don't have a kit. So I'm going to actually change my screen so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm bringing up the app, and I have a document camera showing how to use, showing CodeJumper. So I will be moving everything around live and almost in person, but not quite. Okay, so let's start out with our biggest piece. So the biggest piece is the hub. So the hub is the large piece, and on the hub, the top, we have a speaker, and it feels like a whole bunch of little holes at the top. We have two round buttons. The larger is inscribed with a triangle, and that is our play button. And the smaller is a square, and that is our stop. And then we have the rocker switch, which just turns it on and off. On the front of the hub, we have 4 ports where we can stick all of our, we insert all of our different pods into there, their command pods. So then let's start with the play pod. So the play pod is blue and white, and it is shaped similar to a computer mouse. And coming out of one side is a short cord with a plug at the end. On top, we have 2 dials. We have a tall ridged dial, which is our duration dial. And then we have a flatter dial that has basically rings around it and shaped like a donut, and that is our sound dial. And then inside of each of these dials is another place where we can put another plug in there, and those plugs we'll be talking about in part 2 down the road, not today. Then we have a second pod, which is reddish orange and white, and it has the same tall ridged dial with a port at one end and cord at the other. And this is our pause pod. This adds a moment, a beat of silence in your program. Then we have the loop pod. So the loop pod is different in that it's also computer shaped, yellow and white, a short flat dial, but the ridges in it are a little different than the play pod. And then we have a long cord coming out of the bottom of the pod, and that same short cord coming out of the end, opposite of a port. And next to the port going out is a second port that will help you complete the loop. And then just so you know what's also in the kit, we have the selection pod, green and white. This one has 2 dials on top, one 3-spoke, one 2-spoke with a corresponding port and a cord coming out of that. And then the merge pod that goes with the selection pod, also white and green, 1 port coming out and 2 short cords going out. You'll also find in your kit some plugs. We have different kinds. These are purple and about 1.5 inches, and on top there are different tactile, let's see here, tactile dots. We have the number of dots on top corresponds to the number of the plug. The one I'm holding has 3. So it's shaped similar to a dice. And then a whole bunch of other different ones like a minus, a plus, infinity, and so on. And then the large gray plugs have a port on the top that the other pods can go into. But again, we'll be looking at those in the next series. I just wanted you to know what was in your kit. So now that we've kind of gone over, can I get in the chat? Can everybody just give me a sense of they're ready to go to do the guided activity? And
if you're ready to go, put a Y in the chat.
Thank you, Leanne. Yes. So great. But if you do need some sort of help, we can try to problem solve quickly. Oh, I'm getting a lot of Y's in there. Awesome.
All right.
Okay, looks like we're ready to go. Okay, so more about the guided activities. So these are really that, more hand-holding, step-by-step instruction and demonstration of a program to understand the language and to kind of get you that hands-on experience. to create a program all together as a class with instructor and student, whereas exploration is more student driven. So on the screen, we have a picture of actually myself working with some kindergartners, creating a program using just the play pods. So let's look at what we're all going to build in this. So this is actually lesson 4. So creating threads with CodeJumper. In this activity, students will use multiple threads to create a program using CodeJumper. And just to reiterate, CodeJumper is all driven by sound. And the objective is students will be introduced to the pause pod, and students will create a simple program that uses 2 threads. Students will create a program and then transfer it to CodeJumper. And so vocabulary, thread. So what is a thread? A thread is one set of commands or tasks that can be carried out at the same time as another set of commands. So then we need to know what our materials are. We need the hub, we need play pods, we need pause pods, and we need our computer science journal. So we're not going to do all 8 of them right now, but let's just build this together and see what it looks like. So I'm going to actually bring up the slide. So we are going to create in thread 1, we're going to do some animal sounds. And so we'll walk together how to find the sounds and how to change the parameters of this. So in thread 1, let's talk about where that is, the threads are. So I'm going to bring my camera back up. Okay, so thread 1, when we hold our, I'll tell you right now, I get this backwards 100% of the time, even though I always use CodeJumper of if it's left to right or right to left. So CodeJumper is a lot about trial and error. So we'll know right away if we get it wrong, right? And I think it's really good for our kids to see that, you know, we're not always perfect. Okay, so our code card says in thread 1, so I'm going to take a play pod and insert it into the very far left port. Okay, hey, thread 1 is on the left side. Okay, good, my first problem solving. So if everybody could take a play pod and insert it into thread 1. So when the ports are facing your body, that is the very far left port. And remember the play pod, 2 dials, 1 short and 1 taller. So once you have that plugged in, everybody give me a Y in the chat.
Robin, we briefly touched on this at the very beginning, but since they're watching this and trying to use the sound for CodeJumper with the hub, and they've probably just started connecting that and figuring that out. I think some of you, if you have the ability, you might want to use a different device so you can watch on one and be using the other. Or did you say it was best to have just all the sound coming through through the hub?
Actually, if you're using
computer,
everything on one device, make sure the CodeJumper hub acts as the speaker for your whole computer. So when CodeJumper is connected, all sounds will go through the hub, and it's totally preference. If you want all of your sounds to come through the hub for this, fine, or you can change your sound to be coming out of your computer, and you can change that.
They might hear us talking through their hub right now.
Yeah, yeah,
right.
That's so let me get rid of these so we have a nice clean slate. Okay, so looks like we have a lot of yeses. So now we have 1 play pod connected to thread 1. So it's going to actually ask us to make the using animal sounds. So it's a play pod, and we want it to sound like a rooster. So if everybody could press the, it's time for lunch recess for my child. Press the play button.
Star.
Oh, wait a minute. It said star, so that's not correct. So if we go up and in the app, we need to change it. So you can either use keyboard commands, and change it, but we need to change it to animal sounds. So under the sound set, you can use your keyboard or you can use your mouse, and we want to find animal sounds. Animal sounds. Oh, there's animals. Okay, okay. So now I'm going to play it again. All right, I have a sheep, but we want to make it sound like rooster. So everybody can turn your dial, the short fat dial. Nope.
There's
All right.
the rooster.
There's the rooster, and I just have to tell everybody, my dog, is right outside the door, and she can't figure out where all these farm animals are coming from. So what this is asking us to do is play the rooster sound, but the speed is 0.5, and right now we're at 1 times speed. So on your tall dial, turn that and it's at 0.5. So that is a very slow rooster. He obviously didn't get up on the right side of his rooster house this morning. Isn't that his job? Okay, so we have one in here. Okay, so this is thread 1. So everybody can add in a second play pod. And so the second play pod goes in that same kind of that same chain, that thread 1. So the end of the first pod you put in, we're going to put in another pod. And you hear that click, and then you know that click is telling us that it's connected. And so this one, everybody needs to turn it to a horse. So same thing, turn the sound pod, the sound dial. Okay, horse. But then everybody needs to turn the speed again to 0.5. So this horse didn't get up on time either.
That's a good morning sound.
I know, these are morning sounds. All right, so can everybody just throw a Y in there if you're good, or if you have a question, put them in there so we can kind of see how everybody's doing. Okay, awesome. So now when we play press play, we'll get both of those sounds. Okay, so that's one set of sounds, but we know on the farm that there's not just one sound. There's all sorts of sounds happening all the time. So in thread 2, which is to the right of the thread 1, so the port that's on the bottom of on the front of the hub, let's go ahead and put in a pause pod. So pause pod is the pod with 1 dial, and it's orange and white, and it has the tall ridged dial. Okay, and so we want this one to be just 1 beat pause. So we can turn that.
1 beat.
And it tells us 1 beat. Okay, so we have 1 beat in there. Now, we need to add in another sound. And as Beth and I are on the West Coast of the United States, one thing that we would really like to see is some rainfall. We have a lot of fires going on, so it's really nice. So let's put some rainfall to see if that will trick the skies into giving us some rainfall.
Hey, Robin, there's a great question in the chat that would be good to answer really quick. Just to clarify how you can change the sound and the speed. You were turning the dials right and left on the actual pod, but the question is, can you also change it in the app?
And let's see here. You cannot. Those have to be done right on the. They have to be done on the pods. So all that.
You did change something in the app. So the sound set can get changed only in the app. You can't change the sound set in the physical pods. So it's actually a really good question if you're new to CodeJumper. Sometimes it's really nice to set up the sound sets for your students so that when they are coming to it, they don't have to deal with the app part of it to start. and then they can just deal with the physical pods. Then as they get more sophisticated, you start becoming familiar with how to do that. I hope that answered your question, Conchita.
All right. Okay, so now we have thread 2, we have a pause pod, and then I'm going to add in another play pipes. Add in another play pod to the end of my pause pod. So this time, so back to what Beth was saying, so we have to go back to the app and we need to change it to the nature sounds. So you can either use your mouse or use a keyboard, and under the sound set, let's go to nature. There's nature. Okay. And we're looking for rainfall. So I'm going to turn the blue dial for rainfall. That's part of it. Oh, that's such a lovely sound. So, okay, now we have like a day in the life of the farm. So we have in thread 1, 2 play pods. In thread 2, we have a pause, and then we have a rainfall. So everybody go ahead and press the play button. That sounds like a farm to me. What do you think, Beth?
It's probably driving your dog nuts.
It is. So, okay, so how did everybody do on that? You can put your thoughts in the chat. Were you able to follow along? Did that make sense? Anything need clarification? And then we'll just look at those as we go. But let's think about this. Let's do a momentary reflection. And so this is where in your computer science journal, you reflect and see what you thought about this. So the questions are, what are some struggles that you encountered? How can we help our students organize themselves to decrease frustration? Because that question about changing the app sound, is in the app or is on the pods? And let's brainstorm some strategies and language we can use with our students to help them create these programs. So thinking about that, what are some struggles? How can we organize our students? And what are some strategies that you've already thought about? And you can either come off mute and say it out loud, throw it in the chat. But let's just take a couple of minutes and think about that.
And also good to remember, we did one unplugged activity, but then we jumped up a couple of lessons. So ideally students will have some experience before they're looking at a chart and trying to recreate it in their physical space with their kit. This might feel like a jump to you if you are totally new to CodeJumper. We get that. But also your questions are really important to make sure that we cover them in the first 3 lessons before students get to this lesson. Are there grips holders to help turn the knobs for physically impaired students?
No, that we're not, but all of the knobs are not smooth. They are not smooth, and so there is some good texture to them. They're not. But no, and we've actually had the opportunity to use CodeJumper with students with physical impairments, and was amazed to see their ability to just connect those, connect the chords, and then also turn the dials. But I could easily see coming up with some hacks to be able to turn it, like adding rubber bands around them to make it easier to grip, so they're more rubber would be a great one. Like just using a really wide rubber band around would be a great way to create your own grips for that. And in our field, we're really good at creating a hack for things. So I can see a lot of ways that you can actually make hacks, and making some of the tall ridged ones, they're about 1 inch, and there's enough space that you could make it thicker if you needed to as well. So,
and if you don't have a kit, you might not be able to feel this, but when you turn it, it actually has a stopping point. It's slight. You can roll right through it if you were twisting really hard, but the sound feedback also lets students know where they want to land. So there's a lot of students with OT needs that have, this is a great skill for them because it actually helps with some of the motor skills that they're working on. But I could see I like Robin's rubber band hack, but I think you could also add a couple of other things. Since the dials are not really close together, I guess even the duration dial on the play pod, the taller one on the play pod would be even easier to add, like a crayon across the top. You know, if you rubber banded a crayon across, so that you could have something in addition to the dial to be able to twist with.
Like leverage.
Yeah. Sorry, leverage. Good word.
Yeah. Awesome. So does anybody have any thoughts on their reflection? All right, so just keep thinking about things in your mind and as we go through. So let's now talk about.
Keep dumping your questions in the chat. We want to hear them.
So Beth, can you walk us through what CodeJumper in their classroom could look like?
Sure. One of the great things about CodeJumper is that a lot of kids are really excited about it. And it is not something that needs to be separate or done in a hallway or necessarily as a Paulette. It can be done in small groups or with just a gen ed class. The picture you saw earlier was Robin in a kindergarten general education classroom with students with visual impairments embedded in there. And you couldn't tell who was who. It was just across the board. This is an image of a couple of students sitting at a table together. It is a great opportunity for communication between students because there's a lot of problem solving that happens. Maybe you were doing it just now trying to get the animal sounds, but if you had someone to work with, watching students be able to work together, hearing them dialogue about their ideas of what they think might make it fit is great. It gets a little noisy because there's also noises in CodeJumper itself. So sometimes that's a consideration for a gen ed classroom if you have all those people in one place. I don't know if anybody's doing that right now, but thinking about being a quieter place, or if you have a student who's very sensitive to sound, keeping that in mind with the volume of group work. We have seen this used in classrooms as a station. So a lot of teachers who are embedding this in with their other elements of computer science that they're teaching are using this as a station that students spend maybe 15 minutes on. They solve one problem, or maybe they do one element. Maybe Monday they did the Unplugged activity, and Wednesday when they come back to computer science, they're doing the guided activity. So it may not just be in one day. They might be working on algorithm for a week. And each of the little pieces comes in as a station. It's a small period of time, depending on the age of the kids. Kindergarten attention span is not always that long, so kind of keeping that in mind. But that seems to work as a pretty awesome space. I think you could also have a space in your classroom where it's just a station that's always available, which is fun for exploration because there isn't any, it doesn't save anything. There's so much exploring that can happen that it would be awesome to have as a creation station. I'm thinking elementary station, with your computers or with other creativity, imaginative play spots. You could also have CodeJumper and a couple other computer science things as a station. But a lot of students are doing it also one-on-one. You know, it depends on the needs of your student, really. But one of the beautiful things is all kids love it. It's it's very engaging for a lot of students. So
we have a couple of questions in the chat. And can you change the volume on CodeJumper? Absolutely. The rocker dial, like when you turn it on, it can go louder, and that's also the sound volume button. And if you have it going through your computer, you just turn it up and down, same as you would with sound on your device. Another question is, what if you're a blind student like me who's just learning to code? This is really great. It gives you that real tactile. I actually talked to a 7th grader who, I'm actually sorry, he's 8th. No, he's 9th grade. Oh my goodness. So last year in 8th grade, and what's really nice is like when you get to text-based coding, especially looking at like a loop or anything, there's a lot of characters there of what that looks like. So CodeJumper is a great way to get those basic foundations because you get a more concrete way of learning them. So if you're just getting started, it's really great. Doesn't matter your age. And it's also great as a supplement to working with a text-based coding language, like Python or Java or any of those, because it gives you that concrete, oh, so a loop actually feels like this. And we'll get to a loop later. And being like the two threads, you can actually see two different lines coming out, so you can really be able to imagine what the code looks like. Last question is, are there vibrations for a hearing impaired student? There are not, and I've talked to a lot of people about this actually. The one experience I've had with CodeJumper with a student with a hearing impairment is she put her hand on the hub and felt the vibrations from the hub, and she actually was able to code Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. It was amazing. And that was at an event at Microsoft with teenagers who were doing that. So it was a really great experience. But let's get moving so we don't run out of time. Okay, next, guided activity. So I am going to read this out loud, and what we actually need for this one are 4 play pods, just 4 play pods. So take apart the program you have there, and then just make sure you have 4 play pods ready to go. And I'm going to change my screen so we have the side by side of the app and the camera with all of our play pods on there. Okay, so I'm going to read the code card for you for each piece, and then you're going to put them in exactly how I tell you. So first things first, in thread 1, I'd like everybody to change their sound set to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And I like to have all of my students sing this before we get started, which is really entertaining with middle schoolers, but and some of the older kids. But what we're going to do is we're going to debug this program. So we're going to build Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And oh, question, yes, you can add your own sound sets. Absolutely. And so let's start with adding in Twinkle Twinkle. So I've changed my thread 1 to be Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So in thread 1, put in 1 play pod. Okay, it connected. And then I would like you to turn the sound to play Twinkle 1 for 1.5 speed. Okay, so I'm going to turn my sound first to
Twinkle,
okay, Twinkle 1. And then I'm going to change my speed to
twinkle,
1.5. Okay, so once we have that, put in another play pod, again, making that chain. So writing another line of code, that same thread. And this one, Twinkle 2.
twinkle,
Twinkle 2. Let's see here. Okay, and then turn to 1.5 speed. Okay, third play pod, same thing, plug it into the end, and turn this one to star. We have a couple of errors there.
star, star,
So 1.5 speed is just a little bit faster. So we have Twinkle 1, Twinkle 2, star, and then the last one we're going to put in is going to say little. So I can put in 1 more play pod at the end of my chain, writing another line of code. And this one's already on little, so I just need to turn it to
little,
little. Okay, so now let's play our code. We just wrote a whole program.
twinkle, twinkle, star, little.
Okay, so for those of you who know this song, in the chat, why this is correct and if it is not. I'll play it again.
Twinkle, twinkle, star, little.
What do you guys think? Is that the correct order of the song? We have star and little are switched. Star and little, little and star in opposite order. Right. So this is called an error or a bug. And debugging, where did that come from? Debugging was coined by, oh my goodness, Beth, what is?
Grace Hopper.
Thank you. I'm like, the name is right there. She's an amazing woman. Grace Hopper coined the term debugging because there was a moth in her computer and it was doing damage. So it was causing problems. So that's where we get the term, there's a bug in something. And so we need to debug this. And everybody has thought in doing the problem solving, okay, star and little are switched. So when we're playing, I'm gonna play the code one more time. And when I play it, I'm gonna touch each one of the pods. And this is called tracing the code. So we know exactly where our error is. So here we go.
Twinkle, twinkle, star, little.
Okay, because I was touching them as they played, while I was touching pods 3 and pods 4, that's where our error is. So I need to switch that star to little and
Twinkle, little, star.
okay, so now let's play it one
So
more time.
really quick, Robin, before you go on, what you were switching was the dials, not the actual pods.
Sorry, yes, correct. I was switching the dial. Thank you for that clarification. The sound dial on the pods, not the actual pods. You can do that. You can absolutely do that. That is another way to do that. But what I was doing was turning the knobs. Thank you, Leanne, for that clarification.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Okay, we just programmed Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, where we started out with an error. That is a very, very basic one, but it's really important to start simple, because we wanted to understand that the error, not the complicated program. Okay, so how did everybody do on that one? Everybody do great? Yay for did great? What, yay or why?
It seems so easy, but computer science and coding gets pretty complicated pretty quickly. So if you think about start, it seems very basic, but we want to start very basic with our students, because then they will use this guided activity to help them solve a problem that they don't know twinkle twinkle off the top of their head. They're going for the end result. And that is a big leap for a lot of students that needs to be sometimes step-by-step taught to them. So these steps are all in this curriculum, and you can choose to kind of go faster or slower through it. But the first time through, I'd recommend just starting with the most basic and see if that is what they needed for their foundation to be able to do the next much harder piece.
Absolutely. So on the screen right now, I actually have a code card. So this is how the code is written. So it says thread in all caps, 1 twinkle, twinkle, and then indented, play twinkle 1, and it goes through each one of our steps, play twinkle 1, play twinkle 2, star, and then little, and then play little, and then the next line is not indented and it says end thread. So you know where the beginning of your program is and you know where the end of your program is. And there's code cards in the curriculum for all of this. So they're getting both the text coding, text version, and also coding it physically on CodeJumper. Okay, let's talk about coding from a distance. Where we are, a lot of us are now, is CodeJumper in a distance. How would I ever teach coding from a distance? But as you can see now, we're doing it. You are the ones who have kits. You guys are learning coding right now. We're able to do back and forth. So yes, it can be done during a remote learning. And I think that there is such a huge opportunity to work with your students in a really engaging way, in a hands-on kind of way. So right now it's hard to do the usual hands-on things we're doing with our students, but this is automatically hands-on, doing kinesthetic, tactile learning with your students. So if you only have one kit, how's that gonna work? So what I would say, and I've been thinking about this a lot. So if you have a kit and you have a student who's gonna be using it, you spend time familiarize yourself with the kit, create videos if you need them for yourself, of yourself using it and doing all the programs that you'd like to build, so you can have all that information with you before you pass it on to the student. Write your lesson plans, kind of go through all the debugging scenarios, and try it out with someone in your household and run those lessons by them, and get families involved in the process. And I think this is a really great opportunity to have families engaging with their students in a really fun and interactive way. So not to mention opportunities for peer-to-peer interaction to create a program. So say you have more than one kit in your area and 2 students have it, and they can create programs together, and creating those opportunities for social interaction to work together. And we've been doing that in the district that I'm in locally, and kids are working together, and it's a great social experience for a lot of our kids, especially since traditionally they're in different locations. And so now they have this opportunity to work together. So what I would say is, I have a document camera, and that's what I'm using to be able to show you all how the Code Jumper works. There's a lot of other ways if you don't have a document camera, using a cell phone and the camera and connecting it to your device. It's a great way to interact with your students and being for those hands-on experiences. And or if the student does the same, so you can actually see what they're doing. And again, in my district, we are giving our students who are doing beginning Braille or learning how to read Braille a document camera, so we can see what their hands are doing, which would be a great thing to do also with Code Jumper. You can set challenges for your students, that asynchronous, like independent work time, where students can you set a challenge, and then they can spend 30 minutes or an hour working on this hands-on activity, not book work, not on the screen, but physically creating a product, and then writing all of their information and all their successes and their whatever product you want in their computer science journal. So I actually think Code Jumper is a phenomenal way to get students engaged in learning during remote learning.
I think it's also empowering that families will be there probably, and it can be perceived as something to play with. And if families are brought on board early, just like students, I think there's an empowerment that this is something that you are capable of doing. This is something you can do, and you can learn this, and you can go all the way through and then continue moving on into something, and you could become a computer programmer. You could understand how computers work. There's a lot of families that are intimidated or don't recognize what they're capable of doing. And so it's an easy on-ramp for a lot of people. Teachers too, because teachers are not always feeling confident about it either.
Absolutely.
Let's see, the exploration.
All right, so Beth, so you're driving this one, and so we're gonna actually show this working together, because I have the kit and I have the camera, and Beth's gonna teach me. So here we go.
All right. So in this exploration, the objective is that students will create a program with 8 play pods, set the sounds on each pod, and run and trace the program. So those are actually big steps. We walked through the process with the last guided activity with Twinkle Twinkle, where we told you what to do. You could see it in the code card. We reinforced it. You heard it out. You heard the audio of the sounds. All of those pieces actually build great scaffolding for students. This exploration is to see if they can kind of do it on their own. So it's a little bit one more teacher removed. This is where you have to sit on your hands or cover your mouth as a teacher, because you want to try not to help them see what they run into. Finding the problems is actually one of the best ways to figure out a lot in computer science. So loops. Making a loop with your team, create a program using a loop pod and 4 play pods. You have to work with your team. Now this picture shows 3 play pods, a hub, and a loop pod. Robin, I think we're going for 4 though, right?
Yeah, this was just a random picture to show how the loop actually works. So I'm actually going to, so Beth and I are going to talk this through together and we're going to make it work. But first, let's just walk through really quickly, since we have a lot of new people, on how to, and I'll just do that real quick, how to connect the loop pod so that it works well. So the loop pod is your pod with two cords coming out of it, yellow, flat dial. So we have 4 pods. So what we're gonna do is, actually, it's probably already put together from Twinkle Twinkle. So connect your pods that you want inside the loop first. So I have 4 play pods already connected. And then I'm going to, okay, well actually I'm gonna plug this in here. So
in this actual lesson, we're on the like last part of lesson, is this 6? We would have already walked students through what a loop pod is and how it works. We would have guided them through what a loop pod is. We're going to do that really fast for you right here, but just know in the lesson, we don't just dump kids into exploring without having told them a little bit about it first.
Absolutely. Okay, so I used the short cord of the loop pod. I plugged into thread. I'm actually going to plug it into thread 3 this time. That'll be better. So thread 3. And then I have a port coming out the end, and I have a port of the loop pod and a port on the bottom of the loop pod next to the longer cord. I'm going to plug in the loop pod to the bottom of the loop pod. So these are all my play pods plugged into the lower port on the play pod, and I heard it click. And on the app, we have everything there. It says loop 6 times, then it says play horse scout, and then it goes through each of the 4, and then end loop, but it's grayed out because we can't play it yet because we haven't connected, we haven't finished our loop. So I'm gonna turn all my pods the correct way. And
wait,
so,
Robin, before you do that, will you hit play?
Okay, wait a minute. Excuse me. In Code Jumper, if you make an error, it doesn't say, oh, I'm so sorry, you've made an error. No, it burps at you and it says, no, you've made an error. So anytime there's an error, you get a burp sound, which the kids love. Okay, so the long cord, I'm gonna plug into the other end of my 4 play pods. Okay, come on, connect. Okay, I'm gonna press play, see if it'll work. So we have 4 sounds and they go around, and the loop tells us how many times to play that sequence. Twinkle Twinkle was a sequence. So right now it's 6, which I think is too many times.
5
and
4
for the sake of time, we're going to give everybody competencies. Well, competencies are different for each area, but yes, competency based. I think it's really easy to pull those competencies out. There's standards. The US standards are in the lessons, but you can easily tweak those to meet the competencies that you have up in Canada.
Well, and actually, I think the curriculum is the National Curriculum of England, that we have them listed at the bottom of each lesson. We actually have all of those standards listed there, and I think they would relate really closely to the competencies.
Actually, for sake of time, everybody take a few minutes and we'll just keep talking. But if you have a kit, go ahead and see if you can build a loop. So remember, loop plugs into the hub, connect 4 play pods to the lower port, and connect it with the longer cord. So take a few minutes and do that and work on that, but let's just keep chatting about things. So also change the contrast writing color of the loop pod on the app. Yellow and white is hard to see. Yes, unfortunately you cannot change that, but that is, it's good feedback, and that's one thing that we definitely will take into account, because Code Jumper is always but the app is always a work in progress, and we're continually, APH is continually improving it and making it just more amazing than it already is. All right, so while you guys are building, let's talk about resources. What resources are available to help me get started? So we talked about codejumper.com, and there's the user guide, curriculum, at education.microsoft.com, and the courses for the Educator Network. There is an hour-long course on CodeJumper. The videos are in there. How to for each of the different pieces and parts. Overview of the curriculum is all available in the Microsoft Educator community. What are other coding resources to find out more about coding? A lot of us are beginners in coding, so it's great to just do some more research. Code.org is great. K12.cs.org, csteachers.org, and CS for All are 4 really great organizations that you can get a lot of information about beginning coding. Okay, and so let's talk about questions. Beth put in the chat some of the examples of this CS standards, the K-12 CS standards covered in the different lessons, which is really great. How about questions from anybody participating? Feel free to come off mute and ask questions. Just want to make sure everybody has time. As a blind student, would I be able to use this on my own to learn code, or is CodeJumper just used to help people teach code to others? Oh no, you could absolutely use it to learn code for sure, because you can go through the lessons on your own and get the concepts and then build everything. 100% that you can independently use this to learn how to code. It'd be fantastic. All right, questions. How are our code builders doing out there? You guys able to make a loop? So if you want to, so maybe while people are thinking of questions, Beth, why don't you and I just finish up our loop that we are going to create while questions come in. Oh, my kids loved making the loop. Fantastic. I know, I think the loop's one of the most fun ones. And in the second series, we learned about the infinity pod, the infinity plug. So those make the loops infinitesimal, so they just keep going. Infinitesimal.
Even when I taught computer science to some middle schoolers, the concept of a loop was actually kind of difficult for some students to grasp. And I love that this is a literal loop. It makes a physical loop so that you can, when you trace the code, you can actually feel that it repeats and repeat. It comes back to that loop pod, which tells it to keep going. And for some students, this concept is very abstract, and CodeJumper really makes it so much more tangible and understandable. Maybe all of this is very easy looking at it right now, but man, if you were only looking at text coding or even block coding, sometimes kids get misconceptions about what a loop actually does when they see it with all this other code on the screen. It can be very confusing. So that's one of the great things. If your kids figured it out so quickly, that's awesome.
One thing I like to look at CodeJumper too, and so I taught high school, well, I taught geometry at the School for the Blind, and I taught geometry from the lens of an O&M specialist. Everything we did on all of our shapes was about traveling. First you start at one corner, and then you travel up to the next point of the triangle, then you travel down. And I think of CodeJumper in that way a lot as well, thinking about the loop especially. We start at the hub, just like we always have our starting point, and then we travel to the loop pod. And in the loop pod, we have decisions to make, just like you're at a street corner. And going through the loop is like walking through a cul-de-sac around the sidewalk. So being able to make those connections between things that they're already working on and coding is great. Is taking coding out of the scary place and making it accessible and making it comprehensible, I think is a really fantastic, and CodeJumper is a fantastic way to do that because it makes it so possible. So yeah. Well, I think if we don't have any more questions, I think, yeah. Well, thank you guys for participating today. And I liked all of your ideas. Now after this, I think I'm gonna go make myself a scrambled egg and a glass of chocolate milk.
Feel free to reach out to us if you have questions. Or
Jim, did you have anything that you wanted to close with, or are you good?
No, we can just quickly just it says you cannot share screen while others are sharing.
Robin, you have to stop sharing.
I can stop sharing.
So we'll just sort of wrap up again with some final thoughts. So that would just be a reminder that the Code Jumper is available with quota funds for $769. It is available for non-quota funds for $999, and that it truly is an innovation that teaches all students computer coding. So the UDL aspect of it is woven throughout the device, the app, as well as the lesson plan. So do keep that all in mind. And so with that, I will stop sharing the screen.
I want to say thank you, Robin and Beth. This has been wonderful. I think I'm going to listen to a burp for a little while if I got my Code Jumper. I think that would be my favorite part.